The old man's hands were calloused from 50 years of hard labor, but they trembled slightly as he sat in the fourth row of the Tonight Show studio. Giuseppe Joe Marcelli, 73, wore his only good suit, the same navy blue one he'd bought for his daughter's wedding 15 years ago. His thick Italian accent, still strong after 5 decades in America, made him self-conscious about speaking in public. But tonight was special. Tonight, his children had surprised him with tickets to see that funny Jimmy, as he called the host. What Joe didn't know was that his 3 children, Maria, Anthony, and Sophia, had planned something far bigger than a simple night out. They'd contacted the show weeks ago, hoping to honor a man who had sacrificed everything so they could live the American dream he'd never quite achieved for himself. Joe had arrived in New York Harbor in 1974 with $47.00 in his pocket, a 4th-grade education, and a heart full of hope. He'd left behind everything he'd ever known in a small village outside Naples, his aging parents, his childhood friends, the olive grove, where his family had worked for generations. But he'd also left behind poverty, limited opportunities, and the crushing weight of knowing his children would have the same struggles he'd faced. In America, he told his pregnant wife, Rosa, as they stood on the deck of the ship watching the Statue of Liberty grow larger, "Our babies will have chances we never had." Rosa had died in childbirth 3 years later, leaving Joe to raise Maria, Anthony, and Sophia alone. He'd worked 3 jobs to support them: dishwasher at an Italian restaurant during the day, janitor at an office building at night, and weekend construction work whenever he could find it. He'd never learned to read English properly, never owned a car, never took a vacation. Every penny went toward his children's education, their after-school activities, their dreams. Now, 50 years later, those children had become everything he'd hoped for and more. Maria was a federal judge. Anthony was a heart surgeon. Sophia was a high school principal. They'd all graduated from college, the first in the Marcelli family history to do so. They'd bought homes in neighborhoods Joe could never have afforded. They'd given him grandchildren who spoke perfect English and took opportunities for granted that Joe had spent his life creating for them. But Joe had never stopped working. Even at 73, he still went to his job at the restaurant 6 days a week, washing dishes with the same quiet dignity he'd brought to every job he'd ever held. His children had begged him to retire, offering to support him, but Joe couldn't understand the concept of not working. "Work is what I do," he'd say simply, "is who I am." It was a Thursday night taping in October, and Jimmy was in good spirits. He'd just finished interviewing a young actress about her upcoming film, and the audience was engaged and responsive. The energy in Studio 6B was warm and welcoming, the kind of atmosphere that made for great television. During his usual commercial break interaction with the audience, Jimmy's eyes landed on Joe. Something about the old man's posture, straight back despite his age, hands folded respectfully in his lap, caught his attention. There was a dignity about him that spoke of a generation that understood respect and hard work. "Sir, are you enjoying the show tonight?" Jimmy called out. Joe looked surprised to be addressed directly. He nodded enthusiastically, but seemed hesitant to speak. His daughter, Maria, sitting next to him, encouraged him gently. "He loves watching you," Maria called out. "We watch together every night after he gets home from work." "You still work?" Jimmy asked, impressed. "What do you do?" Joe's voice was quiet but proud. "I wash dishes. Same restaurant, 45 years. Murmur went through the nearby audience members. There was something powerful about that simple statement. The same job for nearly half a century, the quiet pride in honest work. Jimmy felt drawn to learn more. He stepped closer to Joe's section of the audience. 45 years at the same place? That's incredible. What's your name, sir? Giuseppe Marcelli, but everyone called me Joe. "Joe, where are you from originally?" "Italy. I come here in 1974 with my wife. She died when children were small, so I raised them myself." Jimmy noticed the way Joe's children looked at their father with a mixture of pride and protectiveness that spoke of deep love and respect. "Tell me about your children, Joe." Joe's entire face lit up. "Oh, they are everything. Maria's judge, federal judge. Anthony, he's doctor, saves hearts. Sophia teaches children, is principal. They all go to college, all have beautiful families." The pride in his voice was unmistakable. The way he talked about his children's accomplishments, as if they were miracles he still couldn't quite believe. "That's amazing, Joe. You must be so proud." Every day I think, how did this happen? How did dishwasher from little village in Italy raise such beautiful, smart children in America? Jimmy looked at Joe's children who were watching their father with tears in their eyes. Something about this family, about this man's humble amazement at his own success, touched him deeply. Joe, can I ask you something? What was your dream when you came to America? Joe thought for a moment, struggling to find the English words for something he'd carried in his heart for 50 years. My dream was not for me, was for them, he gestured to his children. I want them to have education, to have choices, to be Americans, real Americans with opportunities I never had. And did your dream come true? Joe looked at his children and again his eyes filling with tears. More than come true. They are better than I ever dreamed possible. And Jimmy made a decision that would transform the evening. Joe, I think there are some people here who would like to hear more of your story. Would you come down here with me? Joe looked uncertain. My English is not so good for television. Your English is perfect for what matters, Jimmy said gently. Your heart comes through loud and clear. With his children's encouragement, Joe made his way to the stage. As he walked down the aisle, the audience began to applaud. Not the routine television applause, but something deeper, recognition of a life well lived and sacrifices made for love. When Joe reached the stage, Jimmy helped him up the steps and guided him to the center where they usually conducted interviews. Ladies and gentlemen, Jimmy announced to the studio, this is Giuseppe Marcelli, Joe. He came to America 50 years ago with nothing but hope and a dream for his children. I want you to hear his story. Jimmy turned back to Joe. Tell everyone what it was like starting over in a new country. Joe looked out at the audience, then back at Jimmy. The stage lights were bright, but somehow he felt comfortable, as if he were just talking to a friend. When I first come here, I speak no English. I have no money, no family, no friends. I sleep in basement room with 10 other men. Every day I look for work, any work. Finally, restaurant owner feels sorry for me, give me job washing dishes. His voice grew stronger as he continued. I work every day, sometimes 18 hours. I save every penny. When Rosa die and I have 3 babies to feed, I think maybe I make mistake coming here. Maybe I should go back to Italy. But you didn't go back. No, because I see something. I see other immigrants, people who come with nothing like me, and their children go to school, learn English, become doctors, teachers, engineers. I think if they can do this, maybe my children can do this too. They'll look directly at his children in the audience. So I make promise to Rosa when she died. I promise I will give our babies everything I never had. Education, opportunity, chance to be whatever they want to be in America. The studio was completely quiet, captivated by Joe's simple but powerful words. Jimmy nodded thoughtfully. That must have been incredibly difficult, raising 3 children alone while working so many hours. Was difficult, yes, but was also, how you say, honor. Every day I go to work, I think about their future. Every dollar I save, I think about their college. Every sacrifice, I think about the life they will have because I suffer a little bit today. Joe's voice caught slightly. You know what the best part is? They never know how hard it was. They just know Papa loves them. Papa works hard. Papa's proud of them. They don't know I eat 1 meal a day so they can have 3. They don't know I walk to work so they can take bus to school. This is how it should be. Children should not worry about these things. Jimmy reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out his business card. Joe, I want you to have this, but first I want to tell you something. You said your dream was for your children, not for yourself. But I think you're wrong about that. Joe looked confused. What you mean? I think your dream was to prove that in America, if you work hard enough, if you sacrifice enough, if you love enough, anything is possible. And Joe, you didn't just achieve that dream, you became that dream for other people. Jimmy turned to address the audience. This man represents everything that's beautiful about America. He represents the courage it takes to leave everything you know for the chance to give your children a better life. He represents the dignity of honest work, no matter what that work is. The audience erupted in spontaneous applause, but Jimmy wasn't finished. Joe, we contacted the restaurant where you work. Your boss wanted us to know something. In 45 years, you've never called in sick, never been late, never complained. You've trained dozens of young immigrants. helping them learn English, helping them find their way in America, just like someone helped you. Joe looked surprised. I just try to help people like me. And that's exactly what makes you special. You've spent 50 years lifting others up while never asking for recognition yourself. Jimmy had one more surprise. Joe, we also talked to your children. They wanted to do something for you, and we wanted to help. Maria, Anthony, and Sophia joined their father on stage, each of them crying as they embraced him. Papa, Maria said, taking the microphone, you always said your dream was for us to succeed in America, but our dream was to make you proud, to honor the sacrifices you made for us. Anthony continued, you gave us everything, education, opportunities, values. You taught us that hard work and love can overcome anything. Sophia finished, so we've established something in your honor, Papa. The Giuseppe Marcelli Scholarship Fund will help immigrant children attend college, just like you helped us. Your legacy isn't just the three of us. It's every child who will get an education because of your example. Joe stood there, overwhelmed, surrounded by his children on the stage of a national television show, honored for a life he'd thought was unremarkable. I don't understand, he whispered. I just wash dishes. No, Papa, Maria said through her tears. You built dreams, you built futures, you built us. The audience rose to their feet as one, understanding they were witnessing something profound, the recognition of a life spent in service to others, the embodiment of the American dream, not as personal success, but as generational transformation. Jimmy had tears streaming down his face. Joe, you came to America with $47.00 in a dream. You're leaving here tonight knowing that your sacrifice changed not just your family, but countless families who will benefit from your story and your example. As they helped Joe back to his seat, he stopped and looked out at the audience one more time. Thank you, he said simply. In America, dreams come true, not always the way you think, but they come true. The episode that aired became one of the most viewed Tonight Show segments in history. It sparked a national conversation about immigration, the dignity of all work, and the sacrifices parents make for their children. The Giuseppe Marcelli Scholarship Fund grew to support hundreds of immigrant students pursuing higher education. Joe continued working at the restaurant until he was 75, when his children finally convinced him to retire. He spent his remaining years visiting schools, sharing his story with young immigrants who needed to hear that their dreams were possible. Joe passed away peacefully at 78, surrounded by his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, all of whom carried his work ethic, his values, and his unshakable belief that in America, love and hard work can overcome anything. At his funeral, the restaurant where he'd worked for 45 years closed for the day so all his coworkers could attend. The service was conducted in both Italian and English, honoring both where he came from and what he'd built. His headstone reads simply, Giuseppe Marcelli, father, dreamer, America. He came with nothing and left everything. Because sometimes the greatest American stories aren't about fame or fortune, but about ordinary people who do extraordinary things for love. And sometimes a man who thinks he's just washing dishes is actually washing away barriers, creating opportunities, and proving that the American dream is alive in every parent who sacrifices today so their children can succeed tomorrow.